Thoughts on the readings for January 20th. Genesis 34, 35, Psalm 37, Matthew 22. Genesis 34 records an incident which is extremely instructive for us. Dinah, Jacob's daughter, went out to see the daughters of the land, the result of which is she is defiled by a Hivite named Shechem. She is trapped into a marriage out of covenant with the Lord. Her brothers deceive the Hivites and insist that every male Hivite in the town be circumcised, as a condition for allowing the marriage to occur. Impressed by the wealth of Jacob's family, the Hivites readily accepted the terms, as like all the Canaanites they were covetous. Then Simeon and Levi slay all the males, when they are sore from their circumcision. The sons take all the Hivite women as plunder for themselves, together with the material wealth of the Hivites. Jacob is so frightened by the treachery of his sons, and in chapter 49 curse both Simeon and Levi. Verses 5 to 7 read and contemplate, and is fearful that the entire Canaanite community would be so enraged by the event that they would avenge the evil by destroying Jacob's entire family. Chapter 35 tells of the Almighty's charge to Jacob to return to Bethel, to build an altar, and to begin afresh. It was Jacob's sovereign assurance that as he is the God of Bethel, the promise of protection will never fail. Jacob took his journey in renewed faith. When we fail, we must never become so discouraged that we in despair abandon God. We can be certain that no matter how bad things may seem, our Creator will never abandon His children. Slowly read aloud Hebrews 13 verses 4 and 5. Carefully contemplate the lesson. Jacob's God put the Canaanites in dread of Jacob, so that they avoided him lest they share the fate of the Hivites. There was a condition put on God's support for Jacob: put away from among you all the foreign gods. The same terms apply to us when we seek our Lord after sinning. Utterly forsake this sin in humble penitence. 1 John 1 verses 8 to 10. The altar was built at the site of Jacob's dream, and the town of Luz, meaning ruination, finally became Bethel, the house of God. Verse 8 tells of the death of Rebekah's aged wet nurse, who was buried beneath the oak that became named the Oak of Weeping Allon-Bacuth. The old ways were over, and so the Almighty reappeared to Jacob, confirming the name change to Israel and reiterating the promise. Verses 9 to 12. Jacob's response is to set up, as a pillar, the stone to anoint, or Christ it, by pouring oil over it, offer a drink offering, and rename the site Bethel. Verses 16 to 29 records the deaths of firstly Rachel, and lastly Isaac, as well as their burials. Isaac was buried by both his sons, Esau and Jacob, and rests with the family of faith in the cave of Machpelah, meaning folded. All those resting there will rise again and inherit the promised land when Christ returns to the earth. Rachel, on the other hand, is wrapped in mystery. She had heavy travail and died giving birth to her second son. In desperation she named him Son of My Sorrows, Ben-oni. She had not quite reached Bethlehem-Ephratah, meaning the house of bread and fruitfulness, How ironic for the barren wife, who died in childbirth. Jacob renamed his son Benjamin, the son of the right hand. As well as actually happening, the event was a parable about Jesus Christ, who in his suffering for sins, not his own, and dying was a man of sorrows. Isaiah 53 verses 3-5. But having suffered his father elevated him to his own right hand. Acts 2 verses 22-36. Read and consider. And Rachel's barrenness followed by fruitfulness was also symbolic of a restored Israel. Isaiah 54 verses 1-8. Consider. If we were in doubt as to Rachel's divine esteem, we should read Ruth 4 verses 11-12. She too will receive the loving kindness of her God. Psalm 37 states undeniably and in unmistakable terms that the reward of the righteous is on earth, and not in heaven. Let's start by reading aloud Psalm 115 verses 15-16. We also have been persuaded as we have read what God promised to Abraham, Isaac and Jacob an eternal inheritance on the earth. Romans 4 verse 13. Note that we too, when we are baptized, after believing the truth, become joint heirs to the same promises. Matthew 8 verses 10-12, Galatians 3 verses 25-29, Hebrews 11 verses 39-40. Now notice how frequently the psalm makes that point. Read each of these before resuming the reading of the commentary. v9. v11, land equals Eretz, used of the promised land. v22, v25, and v34. The psalm commences with a warning against being envious of the wicked. They seemingly prosper now, but contemplate their end. Total annihilation. Verse 20. They will disappear as quickly as smoke. Jesus endorsed the psalm's message. After reading verses 9-11, turn to and read Matthew 5 verse 5. The poetry and the symbols are majestic as the psalm reiterates the powerful theme again and again. And so the righteous are exhorted by David to exercise patience until the time comes when the upright will be recompensed. The path of the righteous is strewn with trials, but the end result is peace. Compare Isaiah 26 verses 19. In Matthew 22 we have the parable of the wedding feast of the kingdom, to which we all have been invited through the gospel. Our omnipotent King has provided the only garment needed for admission, the sin-covering raiment of his ever-glorious and preeminent Son. Then follow 4 questions, each one of which provided incontrovertible proof from the Scriptures that Jesus was the promised Messiah. The first 3 asked of our Lord Jesus by each class of his foes, and the last of himself to them, proving himself to be the divine Son of David, after the flesh, but God's Son of the Father's right hand, as attested by Psalm 110. Penned by Warwick Rosser and his team. Produced by Krista Delphin Video. Work.